Imagine picking up your home phone one morning and hearing nothing. No dial tone, not a power outage, not an unpaid bill. The copper line that carried your voice for 30, 40, maybe 50 years was simply turned off. That is already happening to landline customers across the country, and most people get no warning until it's done. And the same month that quiet shutdown was moving forward, federal regulators handed you one sentence that instantly tells you whether a call claiming to be from the government is real or a scam. If you still have a landline, or you've been getting calls that feel a little too urgent, hit subscribe and tap the bell. I break down these federal shifts every week so you find out before it becomes personal. Here is where we start. On June 16, 2026, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, launched a formal campaign alongside the Elder Justice Coordinating Council. They called it the Never Ever campaign, and it exists for one very focused reason: to put a single rule in the hands of every older American before the next scam call lands. The rule is this: no real government agency will ever call or text you asking for payment of any kind. Not gift cards, not cryptocurrency, not wire transfers, not cash apps, not a single dollar. If a caller claims to be from Social Security, Medicare, the FCC itself, or any other federal agency, and they ask you to pay something over the phone, that is the scam, right there. The ask is the tell. This is general information, not financial or legal advice. Confirm your situation with a qualified professional. That sounds simple, and it is. But last year, it didn't feel simple to the people who lost money. The FTC logged roughly 330,000 government impersonation complaints in 2025, up about 25% from the year before. Imposter scams cost Americans around $3.5 billion in 2025. These weren't people who weren't paying attention. These were people who picked up a call, heard an authoritative voice, and felt the pressure of an urgent situation. And here is what makes 2026 different from any year before it. The voice on the other end may not be human at all. As of 2024, the FCC formally ruled under a law called the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, that using AI-generated or cloned voices in robocalls without the listener's prior consent is illegal. That ruling was a direct response to a specific scam pattern: criminals using artificial intelligence to clone the voice of a grandchild or a family member or even a government official, and then calling you with that cloned voice sounding completely real. Have you ever gotten a call that felt slightly off? The voice right, the urgency wrong? That feeling is worth trusting. The FCC's position was blunt. Bad actors are using AI-generated voices in unsolicited robocalls to extort vulnerable family members. Carriers who knowingly allow these calls through their networks now face financial penalties. The technology that makes the scam possible is federally illegal. But illegal does not mean gone. Scammers do not file compliance paperwork. So the rule that protects you is still the never, ever rule. No real agency asks for payment over the phone. Full stop. Now, there is one extra layer to the AI voice scam that most people haven't heard yet, and I want to give you a tool before I move on. If you receive a call that sounds exactly like someone you love, a grandchild, a sibling, a close friend, and the situation feels rushed, financially urgent, or emotionally high pressure, hang up. Do not call back the number that called you. Find the number you already have saved for that person and call them directly. That one habit ends the AI voice scam before it can go anywhere.
Some families have taken it a step further. They set up a private safe word, something only real family members would know, that anyone can use to verify they're actually speaking to the right person. It sounds a little formal, but when a cloned voice is indistinguishable from the real one, a simple word no scammer could guess becomes a stronger safeguard than your own ears. Tell me in the comments, do you still have a landline at home? And has anyone in your family ever gotten one of those calls that sounded like a family member but didn't feel right? I read every comment. Now I want to shift to the part of this that requires you to take action, not just be aware. Because if you have a traditional home phone line, something is changing that has nothing to do with scams and everything to do with how your phone is physically connected.
Major carriers across the country are in the process of phasing out old copper wire landline infrastructure.
The traditional landline, the kind that ran on a dedicated copper line from the phone company, is being replaced with digital alternatives, fiber optic lines, voice over IP, which is internet-based phone service, wireless home phone units. AT&T has already begun this transition in multiple states, and other major carriers are following. Here's the detail that matters for you specifically. The old copper landline worked during a power outage. It carried a small electrical current directly from the phone company's equipment, which meant that even when the power in your house was completely out, your phone still worked. You could still reach 911. The new digital alternatives, voice over IP, fiber-based phone service, require electricity in your home to function. If your power goes out and you do not have a backup battery installed, your phone goes silent at exactly the moment you might need it most. That gap is what AARP and other senior advocacy groups have been raising loudly with regulators. It is not that fiber or voice over IP is worse technology. In normal conditions, call quality is often better. The concern is the emergency scenario. Storm takes out power. Phone needs to reach 911, and the new digital service has no backup. That is the risk. And there is a second layer to this that catches people off guard. Many medical alert pendants, the kind worn around the neck to call for help after a fall, were built to run on the old copper phone network. Same with certain home health monitoring devices. If your copper line is being phased out, and you have one of those devices, the device may stop working, even if nothing is wrong with it. The network underneath it is just gone. This is what I need you to do. Call your phone provider. Ask 2 specific questions. First, is my home's landline service being transitioned away from traditional copper wiring? And if so, when? Second, will I need a backup battery to keep my phone working during a power outage? And can you provide one? If you or a family member uses a medical alert device or a home health monitoring system that connects over a phone line, call that company too. Ask them directly whether your specific device will still function once the copper line is gone. Do not assume it will. Get confirmation in writing if you can. The carriers and the FCC generally treat this transition as a modernization, not a service removal. Copper infrastructure is expensive to maintain across millions of miles. Fewer people use it every year as cell phones and internet-based calling have taken over. The FCC's position is that the transition is acceptable as long as customers aren't left without a working alternative. But what counts as a working alternative, and whether it functions in a power outage, is where the real exposure sits. Asking those 2 questions puts you in control of that answer before the copper gets cut, not after. There is one more piece of this that applies to some older phones. Not the landline wire, but the phone device itself. Carriers have been shutting down older 3G cellular networks, and that process is essentially complete as of this year. If you or a parent is using an older phone that doesn't support what's called voice over LTE, that device may eventually lose the ability to make calls, send texts, or reach 911, regardless of which carrier you use. Medical alert devices that connect via cellular, certain smartwatches, home security panels, fall detection units, face the same question. Check with the manufacturer. Ask whether your specific model is still supported. This is a quick call that can prevent a serious gap. Here is the checkpoint before we get to what actually happens if you do nothing, and why I want you to act this week, not eventually. Let me put the risk in plain terms on both fronts. On the scam side, that $3.5 billion lost in 2025 was real people who heard authority on the line and paid under pressure. The never-ever rule, no government agency ever asks you for payment by phone, is the one filter that works every single time, because the moment they ask for money, they've identified themselves. On the landline side, the risk isn't financial in the same way. It is a working phone when you need to call for help. The copper transition is real and moving. The backup battery question is specific and answerable. The 2 questions I gave you take about 10 minutes total. That is what stands between a working phone during an outage and a silent line at the worst moment. If you found this useful, if this is the kind of breakdown that saved you a phone call to the wrong number or a trip to the wrong website, hit subscribe. I cover Social Security, Medicare, phone rights, and consumer protections for seniors every week. And the next video I have lined up covers another benefit that most people over 60 have already earned but have never collected. I'll have it up soon.
Share this one with someone you know who still has a landline at home, especially if they live alone. Because the copper sunset is not a rumor, and the scam calls are not slowing down. And knowing both of those things before it becomes personal is exactly the kind of edge this channel is built around.